Not a single day in the crypto industry is ever dull. Even though the market had begun to show some signs of redness 24 hours earlier, we were still in the midst of a sea of green. In point of fact, we were still being surrounded by a sea of green on both the weekly and the monthly scales. Nevertheless, as you can see from the current state of my screen, we are now in the midst of a veritable ocean of red. In addition to being in a sea of red on a daily and hourly basis, we are also in a sea of red on a weekly and now an even more frequent monthly basis. And the reason for this is because we are about to see a black swan event in the market. The following are examples of the kinds of things that, regardless of the sort of TA you are operating, regardless of what item you are attempting to forecast happening in the market, guess what? Events like this appear out of nowhere, and they are the source of things like this, which are significant price fluctuations. Is this the beginning of the end of the planet, and are we going to continue plummeting? Is this the beginning of the bear market that is now sneaking up on us? That is not the case, and I am not basing my belief on TA. No, I do not believe that to be the case. Aside from that, I'm not basing it on anything other than my general understanding of the market. According to the cyclical perspective, I am really basing it off of where we are right now. In addition to this, the current state of affairs in the year, which is to say that we are now beginning to enter the second half of the year, or that we are halfway through the month of June, is a significant factor. How about this? The very identical occurrences that are taking on right now have place in May of the previous year as well. Moreover, this occurred a great number of occasions. Now we are going to talk about it. But before we do that, let's first discuss the reasons why the markets are falling. The reason why Bitcoin has dropped below 103,000 yen XRP is now trading at less than $2.10, and why the price of Ethereum is approximately $2,500 flat. Let's switch gears and talk about the most recent development, which is that Israel is getting ready to launch a massive strike against Iran. It is important to note that this was uploaded at 8:21 p.m., which is essentially less than an hour after the original time, isn't it? We have this stunning news. Israel has struck dozens of targets across Iran, including nuclear and military facilities. The fact that we are considering things like this is never a good omen, so let me reiterate that. Obviously, you are aware that we are not going to celebrate this. Oh, this is wonderful, is not what we are saying. It is obvious that it is really poor. It is entirely pessimistic. And, as we do truly kind of look at this, and as we do with the sort of talk on this, the primary issue that I really want to address here is that we have these tremendous, threats of war. These significant warning signals of World War III, along with this and that, are all in our possession. Every single one of these headlines is inflated and, in the end, overblown information. Okay, we come across that rather frequently. We quickly hear the phrase World War III if there is a war that occurs outside of the United States. Actually, I did create a post not too long ago, and it was this one that I produced. After the stock and cryptocurrency markets reached a level of greed, I stated in this piece that panic was beginning to set in. The tree is always shaken by these worldwide events that lead to terrifying headlines like this one, which may be the beginning of World War III. In my opinion, these kinds of circumstances are equivalent to huge shakeouts, which ultimately result in a chance to buy in before a much higher push. In this moment, I am going to make this statement only once, and only once. I did explain in a prior video that equities and cryptocurrencies were both in a state of greed, and that in order to reset the market, we needed to have a modest sell-off, not a crash, not a black swan event, and not anything extreme. Today we were able to get that and even more. Technically speaking, this is beneficial for price activity. This is beneficial for the entire perspective of these markets, as you may say, but I do not approve of the sequence of events that has brought us to this point. Alright, undoubtedly I am not going to rejoice about this. In no way am I suggesting that this is a positive thing. In this place we are not meant to be terrified, and I simply want you all to completely grasp that. The beginning of the Third Global War is not something that I believe to be the case. I do not believe that this is the case. It is not my opinion that we ought to be really concerned if, for example, we are about to enter a bear market or something like to that. Yes, this is still something that we need to concentrate on, as you probably well know. It is vital that we pay attention to, particularly in the event that it begins to exaggerate a little bit. To a large extent, however, I believe that this situation is extremely comparable to the situation that existed in May of 2024, when there were huge confrontations taking place throughout that time period. To tell you the truth, there were over 5.5 distinct confrontations, and in the end there were somewhere between 8 and 9 of them. Okay, at that period of time, the beginning of it was in May. This is exactly what was taking place at the time. It was a pleasant push for us. Additionally, we had a rebound surge all the way into the month of May. This was a lower high than before. All right, at this point, we have already witnessed the big all-time high break that has occurred on this chart. To put it into perspective, we are not at lower highs. However, I would like for you all to be aware that we sold off into the month of July, then rebounded in the month of July as well, and then proceeded to sell off into the month of September. At this point, everyone everyone is thinking that this is essentially a repetition of what happened before, where we are going to sell off, and it is quite likely that we will not have any good price movement until September. In addition, September was not a good month for the company. Indeed, it was little more than a rebound. Subsequently, we began to observe some positive progress. In addition, by the month of November, we will have truly begun to observe positive returns. It is not necessary for us to wait for so long, in my opinion. I believe that in the end, I genuinely believe that this is one massive swing down that will be followed by a much larger expansion to the upside. In the past, for instance, during certain periods in the market, we have had significant sell-offs. This brings to mind the year 2021. In the end, just to kind of demonstrate this to you guys, we did have a major sell-off immediately before the most important move in the market. I would like to go back on the daily just to sort of show you guys how significant this move truly was during that time, because a lot of people will say, well, it wasn't as awful as it is now. I want to show you how large this move actually was throughout that time. The real price action for the month of December is presented below. We had a great push to the upward, and then we hit the bottom. Following this, there was a decline in the price of Bitcoin. Prior to reaching new all-time highs and pushing Bitcoin beyond $42,000, there was a drop of around 9.85% in the cryptocurrency's price. There were also significant sell-offs that occurred in between, such as when, for instance, in November of 2020, we had a 16, almost 17% push to the downside, which was then followed by another one at the beginning of December. Although this was a little retreat that lasted for a considerable amount of time, it was still an 11.79% push to the negative. At this very moment, if we are looking at the price movement that we are now seeing, and once more, I am on the daily platform here. In any case, this is how the everyday routine looks like. It is a good sale that we are having here, and it is a large one. You might say that it's not even close to being a modest little sale. It is a decrease of 7%. But I want you everyone to realize that we have endured much more difficult circumstances. In point of fact, what is truly remarkable about this is that if we actually go all the way back to the beginning of the year and that lovely swing high, and then we go all the way down to the lows, then this was a 32% loss. A decline of 7% is not going to jolt me awake in the least. From my perspective, it is not going to shake the tree. On the other hand, I am aware that this is going to stir up a great deal of anxiety in the market, since it brings to mind the fact that Bitcoin's market share is currently at about 65%. The breaking out of highs is now taking place. The most important question is whether or not we are able to smash the prior highs that were reached on May 7th and reach 67%. I have no doubt that it is feasible. And during this period, although Bitcoin is seeing a decline of 7%, altcoins are experiencing a considerably greater decline. This is the reason why when we compare XRP to other cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin on a daily basis, for example, we see that XRP is lower. One thing is certain, we are going to witness a significant decline in the value of Bitcoin, which is precisely what is taking place. On the other hand, I would want to take you all back to October 1st, right in the year 2024, because once again we have the Iron Dome shattering, and Rand's rockets are not being able to stop them. According to Wall Street Bets, this has had 1.4 million views, which is an insane level of involvement. How about this? Take a trip back in time to October of 2024. As a matter of fact, here we are in possession of. Let us return to the day. Isn't it the 1st of October on time? Okay, let's go back to the 1st of October. The first one is before us, and we had already begun to sell it off. Alright, in point of fact, we had already begun selling off around 9.6% of the overall loss here, which was 11.55%. But do you see what transpired in this situation? During the time that everyone was reaching their peak bearishness, we saw a decent sell-off. That's it. Things are looking up for us. We are persisting in breaking out. Therefore, when it comes to Bitcoin, we are concentrating more on the structure of the cryptocurrency. We did in fact just complete a sale. Yes, everyone is in a state of terror. Please have a look at the level that we really wicked to. Simply put, we are a wicked on this chart. Alright.